All right, we are on to the AFC West. Anthony, Kansas City up number one at plus 160.
Yeah, I mean, this is a somewhat surprising line for the Kansas City Chiefs to win the division. Plus 160, meaning you're actually getting return on your bet, right? Plus, when the Chiefs have been dominant in this division for a long time. So it's no surprise that they're the favorites at plus 160. It's more of a surprise that the line is what it is. So this is a very tempting betting line. The Chiefs have been the reigning AFC West champ and one of the best teams in the AFC. So this seems like an easy bet. Granted, a lot has changed in this division this year, as we're going to talk about during this show. And I think all four of these teams could compete for the division at this point in time. And because of that, I am less inclined to take a bet on the Chiefs plus 160 to win the division, only because of the competition in the division, the fact that anybody can win it in my mind, where I think the Chiefs roster in general has maybe taken a slight step back. They're still really good. I still expect them to be top contenders in the AFC. The rest of the teams step their games up so much that those bets seem more favorable to me at this time.
For sure. That's, Kansas City has won the division every year since 2016. In each of those years, they've had double-digit wins. They got a Super Bowl in there. They lost a Super Bowl in there. It's just hard to bet against them with their previous success. But if you're going to pick a year to pick a new king of the AFC West, this would be the year to do it. So I'd say if you're a conservative bettor, Kansas City is still a good bet. I wouldn't discourage anybody from betting Kansas City. But if you're more of an aggressive bettor, I would look at some of these other teams. Kansas City has its issues. We have Tyreek Hill, going to Miami, leaving a huge hole for the Chiefs and what they're used to doing. The success that we've seen has a lot to do with Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm.
That Pat Mahomes Tyreek Hill combo with his big arm and that super fast speed. I just think that's a huge part of their offense that they're going to be missing, and they're going to have to reevaluate their identity with him gone. So who steps up in that role, or do they change their identity and maybe try something else?
I think that's the thing, right? When you pose the question as who will step into the role for Tyreek Hill, nobody. Those are impossible shoes to fill. Literally, you're talking one of the most elite receivers in the NFL because of his speed. Maybe you could say, well, part of that was Pat Mahomes, right? Chiefs fans will say that was Pat Mahomes that made Tyreek Hill as good as he was. But you can't replace the speed and the capability of beating defenders the way Tyreek Hill does, right? So on this team, although you can replace him with physical players who nobody is going to be as capable as Tyreek Hill, I think the right answer is to change the direction and the thought process of the team. Tyreek Hill, goes deep, and can beat the receivers and get open for Pat Mahomes. Whereas now you're going to have to maybe rely on a number of other receivers who can get open quicker and then get them the ball, faster release, not wait for somebody to get open. And those receivers, their other job is going to be to balance out the role for Travis Kelce the way that Tyreek Hill did. Because if Tyreek Hill's gone, that means more attention on the next guy, who would be Travis Kelce in my mind. So those other receivers that they've brought in, who we're going to talk about, have to find a way to at least together add up to, hey, you better give us attention too, and this offense is going to give us targets too, and get the most out of us.
Right. And a lot of, because you have Tyreek Hill on the team, they've led the league in offensive yards twice since 2018. They've been top 6 in the other years. 2018 and 2020, they were first. Last year, they were third. So I expect that to go down. But like you said, who steps up to kind of take that role? Juju Smith-Schuster is an interesting candidate. Not real sure what to expect from him, honestly. We really haven't seen him a lot recently. Faced some injuries in Pittsburgh. I think things kind of got sour there for him, so he gets a fresh start in Kansas City. I do think he's a great receiver in other ways, more physical. He's a great route runner as well, but he's just not the same player as Tyreek Hill, not even close to the same abilities, right? Two different styles of receivers. So maybe it's Juju Smith-Schuster who steps up.
Yeah, I mean, I like the addition for them in Juju Smith-Schuster, but I'm not sure. He certainly is not expected to reach the kind of production that Tyreek Hill did, right, for this offense. I think he's a capable receiver. I think Pat Mahomes will try to utilize him more in this offense. Will try to utilize him more to his skill set. But he's not going to be breaking anyone's speed and getting open as fast and as elusive as Tyreek Hill did, and yards after catch even as Tyreek Hill did. Mecole Hardman is still on this roster as well. I think he's a guy to bring up here as another potential, or as I said, it's going to be more of a committee approach to try and replace Tyreek Hill. He could get more opportunities with Tyreek Hill gone, and his skill set, is different in that he can still add a speed unit different than Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, and together maybe they could add up to, in an ideal world for a Kansas City Chiefs fan or their offense, those guys are all adding up to what Tyreek Hill did for this offense. You certainly don't need any more from this offense than you got in the past couple of years, and that would be a high expectation to bar to set. But you are now trying to reach what has become the norm for this offense.
For
and
sure.
I think a combination of those guys could do it.
Right. Like, we didn't even mention Sky Moore,
New addition
to the draft. Marquez Valdez-Scantling comes over from Green Bay.
Another good addition.
He kind of has a prove-it year built into his contract. And then obviously Travis Kelce will do what he does. I love the offensive line for the Chiefs. Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey. My theory is that I think the Chiefs are going to run the ball more. I think they're going to kind of do a running back by committee and pass the ball to the running back a lot out of the backfield. That seems to be the strength of the running back room with Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then Ronald Jones comes in maybe to be that short yardage guy. But to me, looking at the roster on paper, I think they changed their identity to a more dynamic run team and maybe, shots here and there through the passing game. So it won't be all passing like we've seen in the past because they just don't have the personnel for that anymore.
Yeah. And when you have a good offensive line and Patrick Mahomes, that's going to create opportunities for you both in the run game and Pat Mahomes' ability to extend plays in the offensive line, holding for him, obviously, will allow those receivers to work to their best ability in getting open and being physical and different ways than they were before. I think his security blanket is still going to be Travis Kelce. I expect him to lead everything in receiving on this team, without a doubt, because he's still a dominant player. And even if he is double teamed, there's going to be opportunities there for him. And Pat Mahomes is always going to be looking for him. So I expect Kelce to lead this team more than anything. The run identity would certainly be a shift for this team. But you mentioned all four of the guys they have, Pacheco being the other one, rookie young guy. They can still come in and compete and run the ball as well as to complement the passing game. NFL wise, we think of the Chiefs and you think of Pat Mahomes and you think of gunslinger. They're gonna pass. But I like the idea of changing that up and relying on the guys you have and getting the most out of them. And with the running backs they have, like you said, you still have that screenplay or short pass ability. So I do expect that shift to happen this year for Kansas City.
For sure. Another player that moves on to New Orleans is Tyrann Mathieu. That won't be the same identity on defense either, at least in the secondary. But this defense is a unit to pay attention to. They always get beat up in the media because the Chiefs will score 50 and the defense, the opponent will score 48, right? That happens a lot in Chiefs games, it seems like. But they've had their moments where they have played as a unit, and when they do, the Chiefs are very dangerous. So I don't think there's a huge amount of turnover, but there's some new faces here. Trent McDuffie comes in. I think he's better, physically better than what they've had in place there. He could do a lot of things in the slot as well. Let's see, Justin Reed, I think, will probably fill the Tyrann Mathieu spot, but they're definitely two different players. They don't play the same style.
Right. I think the biggest thing with Tyrann Mathieu leaving this team is you kind of lost your pulse on defense, right? Tyrann Mathieu was the pulse of the Chiefs defense. You still have leaders in Chris Jones and Frank Clark, and if they can stay healthy, I hope so. But the defense, when you're talking about plays and where they stand, it was always Tyrann Mathieu. It was the guy you're looking for on that team and where he is. So now they have to shift away from that. And as you said, with this defense, as much as we want to say Andy Reid is an offensive head coach, I think the most remarkable thing over the last few years is what he's done with this defense, because I'm on record continually year after year saying the Chiefs defense sucks. This roster defense sucks. They're not going to live up to the offenses that they have to face, and that's going to cost them the division. But they've continually done enough to continue to win games and to be that dominant force in the AFC West and in the AFC in general. So will they finally reach a stumbling block this year now that they've lost Tyrann Mathieu, brought in some younger guys? Maybe, and this division has gotten a lot tighter and tougher. That could certainly impact this team negatively now, and maybe that defensive overlook after pounding everything on offense will come into play here. But their defense always plays better than the roster reads, even when they're giving up 40 points a game.
That's a great point. Yeah, Andy Reid comes to the Chiefs in 2013. They've never had a negative point differential in all the seasons he's been here. Every season except for 3, they've been plus 100 in point differential. So, I mean, that tells you the guy knows what he's doing. I make the argument that he's the best coach in the league right now. No doubt about it. So that obviously helps. Kansas City over under 10.5 wins. Let's go ahead and pull up the schedule here.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest ones. I think I have Kansas City right at 10 wins. So in terms of the betting lines, this is not one of my favorites to bet because, I'm not betting against Andy Reid and these Chiefs and Pat Mahomes very much. But I do have them at 10. So if you force me to choose, I would bet the under. But I'm not supremely confident or feeling like that's going to be the best bet in this division even. I do feel like they have a rough schedule, but they always overcome that. And they have. Again, we talked about even with the shift on offense and the less than stellar defense, I think they will find a way to win the majority of their games. I'm not as confident that it can be 11 or more.
Right. And that 10.5 is the correct spot to be, because I'm 10, 11, or 12, right, is where I'm at. So I think I'm leaning over 11, 12 because we saw the slumps from Kansas City early in the season last year. I don't think that's the case this year. This team is now becoming the villain in the AFC. We've seen that from the Patriots for years. Everyone's against them. Everyone's building their roster to beat them. It's their job to defend it. And I think there's motivation that comes with that. There's motivation with being doubted in the entire offseason. Pat Mahomes has been widely successful, but it doesn't seem like that accolade that comes with that is starting to dwindle away because he's becoming the villain, right? Which is going to help him in popularity and stuff like that. But, you don't get talked about enough or as much, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, even looking at this schedule, there's no easy spots to start this schedule. I mean, where is the easy? It was the divisional games before for Kansas City that you could pretty much chalk it in as a W. But now you look at this and they start against the Cardinals. Then they have the Chargers, the Colts, the Buccaneers, the Raiders.
All challenging.
The Bills, the 49ers. None of those are like, oh, yeah, Kansas City's definitely going to win this game. And even in the second half with the Titans, the Jaguars may be there. You could say, okay, they're going to win that one. The Chargers, again, obviously divisional opponent. Rams, the Bengals, the Broncos, the Texans. Okay, maybe the Texans. So there's 3 games, Seattle's here. 3 games in the whole schedule that I would say I am very, very confident that the Chiefs will win. That's not a lot for me to give them 12 wins. That's why I am definitely betting.
But I'll take the over again because – when you look at, like the LA Chargers or the Cardinals, those are tough teams for an average team. This Kansas City team's not afraid of any team in the NFL, right? They've been here before. They've proven themselves time and time again. So I think when you look at those tougher matchups, Kansas City's going to win more than half of those. So I think I go ahead and put them at 12. And with, we'll get to the Chargers, but I think 11 or 12 is where I'm at with Kansas City.
Wow. Okay.
So let's move on to the Chargers because I think they are the biggest threat, and Vegas does too. But they're the only team that I think could disrupt the Kansas City Chiefs from winning the division. Um, I don't think it's Denver or Las Vegas. I think this team could be in the conversation for the 1 seed. I love Justin Herbert. I love the new head coach. A lot of good things to like there. The addition of Khalil Mack now alongside with Joey Bosa. You can't ignore the talent on this team, and you certainly can't ignore the talent of the quarterback. So all those things together, they are a big threat to Kansas City. So this would be the team that I would take to win the division.
Even though it's plus 250, it's a fairly okay odds. This is the bet I like here as well. I think, the way they've rebuilt this defensive roster, the offensive weapons they have, the way they've been building momentum through the years, the Chargers are probably one of the better bets with this line in this division at plus 250. I like this bet. I think the Chargers will find a way to win the division this year. So my confidence is high on that. That's my pick to win the division. I think, if you put your money down, this could be the way to have a return and still, get a little sweet spot money action there.
For sure. So with that conversation, we talk about Justin Herbert. What does he need to do to win the MVP? I think he's in the conversation for that, maybe under the radar a little bit, but certainly needs to be included as a candidate. Teammates say nothing but great things. You see nothing but great things on the field. Really just Pat Mahomes has been in his way. I expect him to, push Pat Mahomes this year, push the Chiefs, get some wins, and maybe take the crown. What's he need to do to win the MVP?
That's a really tough question. I would say he needs to start by winning the division. I don't think he has a chance if he doesn't win the division. Even if they're competitive and he throws lots and lots of touchdowns or whatever. Justin Herbert has got to win the division because you're staring down Pat Mahomes for the MVP, basically. If the Chiefs are able to win the division under the circumstances now after losing Tyreek Hill, that gives credit to Pat Mahomes. So Justin Herbert Chargers can find a way to beat Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs in the division. That's the first step and the key step, I think, for Justin Herbert being named, because that would be considered a great accomplishment for them and show you that this team does mean business and can live up to expectations, which I think is the huge highlight here for the Los Angeles Chargers. They have not been able to live up to expectations for a long time. They've had great rosters in the past. They've been predicted to do great things in the past, and then they find a way to fall on their face. This team has to prove that they're different than those past teams over the last decade or so. They need to show that we can put it into action. And they certainly, in my mind, have more talent now than they have in those years past when even they were favored. So I do like this Chargers team. And I do think Justin Herbert can make that push for MVP under the right circumstances. Of course, you have Josh Allen in the AFC as well, which, his division is a little easier than the one that Justin Herbert is going through. So that is another obstacle in his way.
For sure. I was just looking at the schedule here because I got to see when that Chargers-Chiefs game is. That is going to be such a great football game. So I want to make sure I get those marks. Looks like September 15th, which is week 2. The Chargers are at Kansas City on Prime Video at 5:15 p.m. That must be West Coast time.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. So that's, week 2, and then week 11, which is November 20th, they play the Chiefs in LA. Looks like a 1:00 game. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because my list of MVP items or objectives, if you will, for Pat Mahomes is the number one thing is you got to beat Kansas City in prime time. They have one opportunity to do that, and that's in week 2. So it starts right away.
Yeah.
Right.
People
let
are
the world know
watching
that I'm here, right? And if you beat Pat Mahomes on prime time, you'll get the accolade, right? Win the division, as you mentioned. I think score 45 touchdowns, pass and throw combined. That's the standard.
That's a great. Yep.
Josh Allen's close to that, but that's about where
I
Rodgers
think he could
is.
do that.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is around that as well. Get more wins than Kansas City and Buffalo. That will certainly help them in the AFC. I think being the 1 seed gets the attention of the MVP voters.
Ooh, that would.
Whoever gets that 1 seed is going to have a huge advantage this year in the AFC. So
if they get the 1 seed, you're assuming they then beat out the Bills and the Chiefs, which I agree.
Right.
That would be a huge accomplishment for them.
Especially in this division that's tough. They just got to win basically a lot of games, which is going to be challenging. But I think if they had a top 3 seed, that would be enough. So, again, we're back to win the division with a good record. You got a real shot to win the MVP. So, high on Justin Herbert this year. I think he can do it. But also, like, they added Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson to this defense.
Yes.
Brandon Staley is a defensive coach. Lot to like about this defense. Lot to like about the secondary. Mix Khalil Mack with Joey Bosa. I mean, I can go on and on and on about this defense. But
you can't understate these acquisitions. I mean, right? This is Khalil Mack, a dominant NFL football player. He was in Chicago, on an underperforming team. Maybe he didn't get the spotlight he deserved, but Khalil Mack is a dominant NFL performer. J.C. Jackson, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. And for them to land both of these guys on a defense that already had a household name in Joey Bosa, this is a phenomenal roster of talent on this defense. And again, there's something to be said about this team and putting the players on the field and then living up to those expectations. You, without a doubt, have the players. Let them, bring them to the best of their ability, and you will get to where you want to be. But they need to, like every team, we say this all the time, I feel, but it's a cliche thing to say. They need to live up to those expectations. They need to prove they can do it. Those 4 guys alone, that is a way to strike fear into your opponents on offense, right?
It's a lot of game planning.
That is exactly.
You can't plan for them all.
It makes matchups, regardless of the fact that they have a tough and elite offense, led by Justin Herbert. We didn't even talk about Eckler and Josh Kelly and the run game there. They brought in Sony Michel. Yeah, Mike Williams. They do have the receivers, the running game, the offense, but this defense alone to plan for is another place where I think underratedly they are going to take a big step forward.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Even the backup quarterback's one of the better ones in the league, Chase Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is a deep team. There's a lot to like about them. I think the defensive line has got to be the best in the league. What do you think about that? Best tandem in the league? Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa.
I mean, yeah, you put those 2 guys together and you're just striking fear no matter what. Just those 2 guys on the line. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's a better one that can compete with that, but I don't think so. I mean, those 2 guys are top 10 defensive players alone.
Right. It looks like they're going to be playing linebacker, but Kenneth Murray in the middle, Jerry Tillery, a couple other names, Sebastian Joseph in the middle. I mean, it's an elite unit. Kyle Vanoy's added to that team as an inside linebacker as well.
Yeah,
they're definitely.
We're talking getting pressure on the quarterback, right? That's really what Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are all about.
Yeah.
That's regardless of if you call them a lineman or a linebacker, 4-3, 3-4, 7, whatever. It's they're coming after the quarterback. All right, and that's what they're doing.
Not to mention Derwin James, when he comes off the edge, it's very dangerous. So that's going to be a nightmare to plan for. Godspeed to anybody that plays the Chargers. Okay, and they're at 10.5. I went over on Kansas City. What do you think about the Chargers here at 10.5?
Well, the Chargers are my pick to win the division, and I said I expect Kansas City to be at 10 wins, so that'll tell you that I am over here. I definitely am taking the Chargers to take that next step, win 11 games. I think right at 11 or 12 is where I see them, but it is enough, I think, with that early win against Kansas City to help them win the division. So I'm betting both the division plus 225 and the over here 10.5. Easy payouts for me, I think.
Yeah, I'll go over as well. And I know I went over at Kansas City at 10.5 as well, which is tough. There's only so many wins you can get, but I do think there's a bigger gap. I think there's a bigger gap than people think. Denver's got new ownership, new coach, new quarterback. It takes a minute, right? And then we know the Raiders are bad luck. So I think that gap between Denver and Las Vegas and the Chargers and Kansas City is much bigger than people think.
Okay.
So I think the Chargers and Kansas City float to the top. And they battle it out for the division. It's going to be hard to pick a winner here. I think at the end of the day, I think we could take the Chargers to win the division. I think that's what you said as well. Just because I think their roster's there's so much more depth. I like their quarterback. I mean, he's not as good as Pat Mahomes, but it could get to that level. I like the run game, I like the receivers. So a lot to like here. But it'll come down to those last few games for the Chargers. The Colts, Rams, and Broncos, their last 3 games. That will decide who wins the division. Let's take a quick look at Kansas City's schedule. The last 3 games, Seattle, Denver, and Vegas. So a little lighter on Kansas City, but I like the Chargers. All right, let's move on to Denver here at plus 260. Vegas is pretty high on Denver. You know, we had the Chargers at plus 250. The Broncos are right there at plus 260. I mean, I know they have a new ownership, new coach, new quarterback. So I think there's a lot more going on there than there's more stability with the Chargers, less stability with Denver. What do you think about plus 260?
This was one of the more shocking lines for me. Now, I know I said this competitive division is going to beat each other up and anybody could win. Can the Broncos win the division? If somebody said that to me, I'd say yes. But plus 260 is a little too close to the Chargers and their line. And I don't think that the Broncos are better than the Chargers at this point based on their roster and their experience and everything else that they bring. Justin Herbert has been with those guys for a while. Russell Wilson is coming in brand new with a new coach and a new roster. The Broncos had in place a team that was capable of winning. And for a couple of years now, we've said they were a quarterback away. And if they could fix the quarterback problem, they'd be competing in the AFC, for the Super Bowl. And now with Russell Wilson, we'll see if they can bring this roster to that potential. But still with Cortland Sutton coming off injury, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, a lot of these guys are capable, but have not shown that high expectation yet. So this one definitely made me raise an eyebrow. They do have a great defense. I do like the Broncos defense and the consistency they have there, but I don't know that it's enough to compete with the Chargers and the Chiefs in terms of who I would expect or who I would bet to win the division. So I'm not touching this bet, even though it's pretty close to that Chargers. Too close for me. If it was more like 500, I might hop on it a little bit, but not quite at 260.
Right. Don't like Denver at 260, even with their winning history and everything looks great on paper. I like the coach, Nathaniel Hackett. I like Russell Wilson. But still, I think it takes a little bit. And the Chargers and Chiefs are just better. I would not take this bet as well. Let's move on to Russell Wilson. Comes over from Seattle. Kind of had a down year. Can he bounce back? And you're going to see the same Russell Wilson in this new system. Lots of things to like here with Jerry Jeudy, who's a high draft pick and a phenomenal route runner. Cortland Sutton can get those 50-50 balls. He's been battling injury in the past few years. KJ Hamler, now healthy, looked great in the preseason. Another thing to like there, they did lose Noah Fant, who I was high on. However, can Russell carry this team with the new set of weapons that he has?
I think yes. I think this is an easy bounce back for Russell Wilson. I think this was one of the best landing spots for him, and mainly because I think his struggles in Seattle were not because of the weapons he had, but because of the offensive line and how much they relied on Russell Wilson to be the guy. Here, this offensive line has been rebuilt as well over the last few years, much stronger than what he had in Seattle. Now he has other weapons to rely on. They have Javonte Williams at running back. They're a run-first team. They could do that. They have all these weapons that we talked about in the receiving core. I fully expect Russell Wilson to be back at what his potential was before last season when he took an unexpected drop-off. So Russell Wilson will be back in form, and he just got a new contract too, so that situation is settled. I think there's less on his mind in terms of where am I going to be next year and all of that conversation that goes on in your head sometimes. So the distraction is gone. There's more expectation again, but I think the load is a lot lighter for Russell Wilson, and he's going to excel in that position.
For sure. I think the community is excited for him. The fan base is excited. This is kind of what Denver's new identity is. We sign high-level quarterbacks and get a Super Bowl out of them. That's kind of, they're only 1-for-1 on that with Peyton Manning.
But, the GOAT.
But that's a big one. And now here they are again trying to get a proven quarterback later in their career. I think it's a good strategy. I think Russell Wilson absolutely has a Super Bowl left in the tank. I just don't think it's this season. I think it's going to take a while to get familiar with the new system, with the new weapons, the new lifestyle. I watched the Serena Williams match last night, and Russ was right in the audience, with his aviators on, sitting next to Sierra. So it's like I kind of get it's a new lifestyle too, right?
Definitely.
Let's move over to Broncos defense. Are they underrated? Vic Fangio leaves town, but very old school defensive coach. I thought their defense always played well, but the offense could not get anything going the past few seasons with Drew Lock at the helm or ex backup quarterback. They even had a receiver playing quarterback one game. So I mean, what do you think about this Broncos defense?
Yeah, I think the defense is good and is underrated. They're underrated because that's basically the only way they got wins the last couple of seasons. And there hasn't been a huge amount of turnover here, and they've brought in younger talent like Patrick Surtain, who I am very high on, and I think will do well for this. They still have a guy like Bradley Chubb, who has been dominant for them and certainly an anchor for the defense. I really like this defense and what they're capable of. Now, under a new coaching scheme, does that mean something is going to change and they could see a fall off? Certainly, there is potential for a fall off from what they've been the past couple of years. But I think that consistency and the pieces they brought in will only complement and continue the standard that they've set for the defense.
For sure. I agree with you on that. Justin Simmons, still a big piece there.
Yes.
Ron Darby.
Yeah,
old school Ron Darby still there. And so there's lots to like there. Just need a couple adjustments, probably transitioning coaching schemes and coaches. The other thing transitioning, new ownership. Rob Walton and family now owns the Denver Broncos. They're now the richest owners in the NFL. Will that impact team performance? Sometimes, billionaires tend to be a little hands-on. Sometimes they're a little loose. Really don't know what this ownership group will be like. But it's fair to say it'll be different, right? We know Pat Bowlen and family were outstanding owners. They really, they left the leadership and football operations to football people. John Elway being that person for a number of years. But this new ownership group, you just don't know what you're going to get, but it will be different.
I actually think it'll be a positive for this team, and I'll tell you why. The Bowlen family set the standard for ownership in the NFL, really. I mean, they were pretty good. And they won, right? They got Super Bowls when they owned the team. Now that there was a transition period here where things got pretty sticky and they sold the team, and living in Denver for a few years, we were in the loop on these stories of, what's going to happen with the team, who's going to inherit the team, or are they going to sell the team? Then once the team finally went for sale, there was litigation. There was all this distraction in the front office and the higher ups of what was going to happen with this team. Now that there is new ownership in place, they can move forward with the vision that they have for this team. They can lift that burden off of the shoulders and the fan base and everybody who's involved around the Broncos to know that there is stability here. There is a vision here. Here's what we're going to do. Now let's put it into action, which is the part that has to be shown. Ownership and how you're going to go about the leadership end of it. Do you want to be hands-on or not? We will learn that over time. But certainly, I think, if anything, this is a net positive for sure. Big positive for the Denver Broncos as an organization.
I could see that. I could see that. But there is a transition period, especially in
Adjustment.
Buffalo, right? When the Pagulas came in, it took a few seasons to get going.
Yeah,
right?
But they hired Rex Ryan. I mean, that was the dumbest move in coaching.
But you gotta live and learn. But they immediately, the old coach, the old regime's gone. They get their own guy, right, or own person. So that's big. Okay, Denver over under at 10.5. Again, that's 3 teams in this division with 10.5 wins.
That's a very high number, and I am definitely on the under for the Denver Broncos. I do have them finishing third, maybe in the division, maybe even fourth, behind both the Chiefs and the Chargers. And although I think 10 is where they could be, 10, they could be in the playoffs. They can make 10 wins and get to the playoffs. I'm that high on the Denver Broncos. But to be confident enough to bet them to win 11 games, I am not. So I am taking the under here. I'm not, this isn't one of those bets that I'm super high on, but I certainly would have to bet the under.
Yeah, I think I'll take the under as well on them. I even think they could finish last in the division, and that's not because they're a subpar team. It's just this division is absolutely competitive, and they could be last in the division with 7 or 8 wins, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with them. It's going to be a tough road, but it's going to be a tough road for all these teams. But again, I think Denver is still trying to figure out their identity, and the other teams have a head start. I just like that narrative. So I'll have Denver finishing last. So I'll take the under. But I still think 5, 6, or 7 wins, I think, is where they're at.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Looking at the schedule here, at Seattle week 1, coincidence? Not really.
Yeah, the NFL wanted that game, and they got
Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football.
We got Baker going to Cleveland too, so it's all tied in, right?
Yep.
Close out the offseason. Houston, San Francisco, the next games, both at home. And then start the division off with the Raiders in Las Vegas. Some tough matchups down the stretch here. Let's see. Indianapolis, Chargers, Jets at Jacksonville. Then you got a bye week. Jacksonville games in London, mind you. And then at Tennessee after the bye week in week 10. Las Vegas, at Carolina, at Baltimore. So that's week 13. And then you finish up with Kansas City, Arizona, Rams, Kansas City, Chargers.
That's a tough.
It's a very tough stretch there, especially going into the playoffs. If you're not in the playoff conversation at that point, you're not going to be, because all those teams will be, in my opinion.
Yes, agreed. Very tough stretch. Probably one of the hardest we've seen to end the season, because you could be in good position and think, oh yeah, our teams, even if we go 500, we'll make the playoffs. We'll be in good position. And you can easily lose a stretch of those games in a row to really knock you off your high horse. So they better be ready for that for sure.
For sure. And then we got one more team in this division, the Las Vegas Raiders at plus 650. You think being in Las Vegas, they would have a little advantage. It really didn't do them any favors.
Yeah, this is an interesting one to me, because I think this is a little bit underrating where the Raiders are and what they can do. So I do kind of like this bet. I'm not picking the Raiders to win the division, but I like where the odds are on this bet if you do like the Vegas Raiders and are thinking they could win the division. This is a heck of a payout for a team that is ready to compete now. We just talked about the Broncos. We talked about how good the other teams are. Vegas can beat every single one of those teams, and it would not surprise me, right? So they can still compete. That means they do have a legitimate shot to win the division. We're not talking about the AFC East or one of these other divisions that is said and done, and why the odds are so high for some of these lower teams. So right now they have Vegas finishing 4th in the division, and the odds are nice. I bet this if I think the Vegas Raiders are going to exceed expectations.
Yeah, I like the bet too. If you're an aggressive bettor, I think this is one you should definitely include.
Risky, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's risky, but this, like you said, this team is one of the few teams that's ready to win now with the plus 650. I mean, there's few teams in this situation, right, where they can win now and they have the higher odds. So anyway, what's going on? There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes with the Raiders. I've been calling them the bad luck Raiders for the past few seasons, but man, seems like it's getting worse and worse. Their draft evaluations, I don't know what's going on here. Alex Leatherwood, waived by Chicago.
Yep.
Damon Arnett, had his off the field issues, gets cut. We have Jonathan Abrams, 5th-year option being declined. We have Trayvon Mullen from Clemson going to the Cardinals in a trade. They declined the option on Cleveland Farrell.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's just a lot going on with these draft picks. And what do you think it is? Is it ownership involved? Is there direction they're going? I mean, it seemed from John Gruden to Josh McDaniels, where I think John Gruden was the guy in charge, right?
Yeah. So
it wasn't Mike Mayock.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I don't know if that's true now.
I do think that's the root of the problem, is when you have draft picks are so important to building an organization and having the depth that you need to overcome the challenges in front of you, right? The Chiefs do not have to have one of the best drafts to continue to be a good team. But when you're in consistently third and fourth place, like the Raiders, you rely on the draft to add that talent to continue to build and reach the teams that are in front of you. And the Raiders have failed on that front miserably, like badly. And there have been question marks,
Right.
mostly from the last regime, yes, where it's like, wait a minute, they drafted that guy 3 rounds earlier than people projected, and they traded what pick for who now? And
Right.
it's been a little bit of a
Questionable.
destruction of the front office. And now, just like most regimes, although the Raiders have a win now roster and could win now, they also, with a new coach and front office, have to get that, change the culture of how they evaluate the draft and what they're doing in the draft to get these guys to stick around and be
Right. And
stars.
we didn't even mention Henry Ruggs.
Yeah,
And
well,
you just some
yep,
stuff you just can't predict. You could
that's
be the
bad luck.
best kid in college, and they do all the research on the investigations of who this person is, and they come in and they make one stupid mistake. Some stuff you just can't predict. I think Henry Ruggs was still a great draft pick for them, as are some of these other guys. But I don't know. When you see consistency across the board, that all of the picks are having issues, now you know something's up, and it's
Right.
not just a random chance thing, right?
Yeah.
There's statistical significance to it, right?
This is an evaluation problem for
right,
sure.
for sure. So, okay, so with that, we have Josh McDaniels coming to town, which I don't know if a lot of people are thrilled about, really, because he's left a lot unproven as a head coach. The Denver thing was a disaster.
Yep.
They win a playoff game with Tim Tebow, which he gets credit for that. But then you find out maybe he's doing some Spygate type stuff. We've heard that through players and podcasts and things like that. Regardless, I think Josh McDaniels is a large contributor to New England's success over the years. But how will he be without Tom Brady? Last year, we got a little taste of it, not real sure. But then him leaving town tells you maybe there's some bigger issues.
Well,
I just don't trust him as a head coach. That's how I feel about Josh McDaniels. How about you?
I will say this is the best roster he's been head coach of, right? So I think that says a lot, right? And regardless of what's happened in the past, he had success. He's earned this job. He's earned this chance by winning and then continuing to win as an offensive coordinator and showing whatever he's doing in interviews clearly impresses the teams that hire him. But I think this is his shot now, but his leash is a lot shorter than most new hired head coaches. Much, much shorter. I would give him 1 year. If you don't show, now it's depending on where the bar is. I'm not the bar is ball, but if you don't show that you can take this team to the next level, at least with guys like Carr and Davante Adams, bring in Davante Adams, which we haven't even talked about much yet, and the rest of the guys on the team, Josh Jacobs, this roster is good enough to win and compete now, right? And you're supposed to be this offensive mind who's capable of doing that. These are the best pieces you've had. Prove you can do it, or we know that you can't. And at that point, he's back being the offensive coordinator who was only good under Tom Brady, and that was it.
And that's the thing. You talked about Davante Adams. Let's bring him up. Josh McDaniels really hasn't had a lot of success with receivers. I mean, Julian Edelman was a large contributor. Gronk was a large contributor. But I think that was more Brady's relationship with those players.
Right.
And the time that they put in together to learn the different nuances of the offense. I'm not real sure Josh McDaniels gets credit for those large statistical years in New England. One thing I do know about Josh McDaniels is he's very good with running backs. And I think Josh Jacobs is the biggest beneficiary of having Josh McDaniels as the head coach. I think he'll have a significant increase in stats, a significant increase in carries. But how do you think they tie in Davante Adams? Do you think he has a lesser year, a setback year, or do you think he continues to produce the way he has as the best receiver in the league?
He'll definitely take a little step back going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, because I like Derek Carr and I like this connection for Derek Carr, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. There's no two ways to cut that, right? So he is a step down, meaning that Aaron Rodgers was so good at finding Davante Adams the second he got open or the second before he got open, right? It takes time to build that kind of chemistry, and they will, and they have worked on that already. And even if they're 100% confident in that, Derek Carr is not as good as Aaron Rodgers at finding that receiver when he's open or just before he's open. But I expect pretty high level from Davante Adams. I still expect him to be a top 5 NFL wide receiver in statistics. And I expect him to lead this offense. I like the idea of running more with Josh Jacobs, and that's only going to open up opportunities to Davante Adams. Adams is used to being the guy who gets covered, and now he's getting covered again here. So that doesn't change for him, like we've said for some other teams in this situation. And you look at other guys on the team like Hunter Renfrow, who could get more opportunities in the presence of Davante Adams. Yeah, Darren Waller, who's a great tight end. This is
there's a lot to like on this offense.
Yes, so Adams should do what he's capable of. I fully expect. I do not think that Davante Adams was only good because of Aaron Rodgers. Davante Adams is a top 5 receiver, I still think, in this NFL on this team.
For sure, and he'll draw some attention. So really, I think they're going to be successful on offense. I think Josh McDaniels, because Derek Carr is a similar player to Tom Brady. He's a pocket passer. He can run, but he doesn't do it a lot. So I think that really benefits Derek Carr, because now you have a coach who's worked with the greatest pocket passer of all time for a number of years. You should see a lot of similarities between the way they think and the way they call plays. So I like that relationship, and they are stacked on offense. So that's why I have them third in the division. Vegas has them at 8.5 for their over-under on wins for the year. I'm going to go over because I have them at 9. I think 9-8 is the new 8-8, and that's what they are. I think they're a 9-8 team. The only thing that could really impact that is the competitiveness of the division, but I think their roster is good enough, and Josh McDaniels, say what you want, he's very experienced. I don't think any game's too big for him as a play caller, and I think they'll maybe pull out some of those games. So I'm going to go 9-8 for Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I'm at the over too. I'm not pounding the over here because there is the air of uncertainty around this. But it certainly would not surprise me if Vegas wins 11, 12, gets second place in the division even. I think that's the ceiling for them. But I right now definitely think they can get over 8.5 with the schedule that they have and the teams that they're playing, that are against some of the other divisions based on where they finished last year. So I think that'll help Vegas in this competitive division definitely get to third place, maybe be competing elsewhere. This whole division is going to be a shuffle throughout the entire season. But I expect all of them probably will finish above 500 with 9 or more wins.
Yeah, or it could backfire. Play devil's advocate here. Because they all beat each other, all of them will be in the under. So that's one strategy to go about it.
Yes, and let's remember, Vegas is a playoff team. This is the Chargers were not a playoff. Vegas is the playoff team from this. So the Raiders have something that they're playing up to, not trying to play from, like the Chargers are chasing. So that could aid them in this too.
Yeah, not a bad point. And maybe that's why some of the first round picks are getting cut, is because there's someone on the roster who's better.
Yeah, that's all it comes down to.
So yeah, lots to like about the Raiders, and I do like the direction they're headed in. You just got to see a little more from Josh McDaniels. If he gets to 9 wins, I think that's considered a successful season in this division. So, I like Derek Carr at the helm. So, I think I like the Raiders. If they were in any other division, they could be in the conversation to win. But all right, we'll see you next time. Thank you.